Afternoon. The time is now 1:08 p.m. The State Board of Education meeting is returning to open session. Quorum of the board is present. Regular meeting of the State Board of Education is reconvened. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
Yes, there are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limit so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Please finish your sentence and end your comment when the timer goes off. Thank you for your cooperation. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people. Any person disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. Public participation will occur in person and virtually. We will begin with those persons that are physically in the room with us today and then move to those in the queue online. First person in the room today is Heather Eckner. Once you're seated and ready, you may begin your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members, superintendent, and department staff. My name is Heather Eckner. I'm the statewide director of education for the Autism Alliance of Michigan. The Autism Alliance education pillar advances a whole child vision for Michigan by catalyzing advocacy and engagement activities to move an equitable education agenda for children and youth with special education needs focused on funding reform, appropriate identification, access to interventions, system accountability, and decreasing disparities. I am here before you again this month to continue providing public comment on the relevant findings of the Special Education Experience Survey, which serves to elevate lived experience, identify system barriers, and amplify the voices of parents and students with disabilities who have engaged with the special education system in Michigan to inform collective advocacy efforts. Today's board agenda item related to graduation rates aligns with the Autism Alliance's vision for education and working to move Michigan to become a top 10 state in preparing students with disabilities for the most independent life possible through accessible, high quality, and inclusive education opportunities. The Autism Alliance's strategic framework has set a 10-year goal to advocate for systemic improvements that will result in the high school graduation rate for students with disabilities to be on par, the same as their non-disabled peers. Based on review of the outcome data and trends over time, we have a lot of work to do in Michigan. While we applaud the recent announcement of record high graduation rates, sadly, families of students with disabilities do not see this achievement as a shared one. While the state's 4-year graduation rate for students without disabilities was 86%, the rate for students with disabilities was just 61%, a gap of 25 percentage points. Regarding students with disabilities, Michigan has the opportunity to improve one of the lowest graduation rates and one of the largest graduation rate gaps of any state in the nation. And as the overall student population in public schools has been in decline, the proportion of students being found eligible to receive special education services has increased. This is a consistent trend both nationally and in Michigan, with autism being one of the fastest growing prevalence areas that we're seeing. So this is a call to action. Michigan must do better for students with disabilities. We need strong leadership in our state willing to confront honest information about the evidence of outcomes for all students in our public schools. And we need the courage to act with a sense of urgency. The Autism Alliance of Michigan calls on state leaders and policymakers to address the extremely low graduation rates of students with disabilities. We have some recommended activities that do align with what's been discussed here, but one of our major calls is to establish aggressive multi-year graduation goals designed to close the gap between students with disabilities and those without. We want to have a required early warning system. We want to be able to have enhanced promotion of personal curriculum and enhanced resources for parent centers.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next in the room is Karen McPhee. Yeah, that's fine. Yep. And Vanessa Keesler. They'll be at the table together. And whoever is going to go first, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Board, Superintendent, Michigan Department of Ed. I'll be brief on the grants clock today. We are 161 days in. We're not at 100% yet, but we're ticking down toward that last bit, and we look forward to celebrating with all of you when we cross that 100% finish line. But I did want to pivot and talk a bit more about launch and our work. As I've shared at this table before, we are driven by a 3-pillar framework that combines reinventing our system such that a high school diploma means demonstrated mastery in future-ready skills and competencies. Second part of our framework, aligning responsibility and accountability in the system from the top to the classroom. And third pillar, fully and equitably funding our system, which we've spoken about less at this table. So I want to share and make sure that everyone understands that Launch Michigan, at the core of our DNA, is about increased, adequate, and equitable funding for Michigan schools and Michigan students. We follow the School Finance Research Collaborative and our policy in this area, and we've championed and supported every increase in foundation allowance, as well as additional investments into the weighted funding formula and the opportunity index, and we continue to do so in this exec rec and until we reach the inflation adjusted per pupil allowance recommended by SFRC, and we are engaged in efforts to redefine and redesign underlying funding formulas to ensure student success. We supported and championed MIPSR's reform from the initial framework, fixing MIPSR's and then redirecting the savings into K-12, and we're part of the group this summer that brokered the eventual deal that was signed into law this fall. We championed, advocated, and helped construct over $1 billion of investment into addressing Michigan's critical educator shortage, including student teacher stipends, scholarships for future educators, and grow your own programs. And in recognition of our work there, Senator Camilleri has asked us to review current investments and recommend future steps. We helped secure over $150 million in out-of-school time funding. We helped design and secure $250 million for schools, for districts and ISDs to find efficiencies that help ensure the most money gets to kids in classrooms. And we've helped navigate an additional $150 million in this year's exec rec to continue that important work. Launch Michigan in every corner of our coalition, from business to education to labor to philanthropy, 100% stands for the need for Michigan to have a fully funded, equitably funded education system. We know it's critically important. We know you cannot do it without that. And we have done that since we began. And Karen's been here since the beginning. So it is one of the 3 pillars of our framework. And this launch does combine people together, business, education, labor, and philanthropy, who do not always stand on the same side of this funding issue. But launch does and will continue to do so. And we know that true system transformation takes more than just funding. That's why we're guided by our 3-part framework. What we like to say around launch is it's a recipe, not a menu. And you need the other 2 pillars, the reinvention and the responsibility, to truly get the system transformation that Michigan needs.
Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. When people say you've been here since the beginning, it means you're old. So, State Board members, Dr. Rice, so good to see so many of you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. It is great to see your agenda today and see so many great things happening for so many of our students in so many of our schools. To be sure, many of our students and our schools experience exceptional educational opportunities, and they all do quite well. It's unfortunately also true that many of our students do not have that same experience. On one hand, we'll have the graduate who earns the full ride scholarship to a top university. On the other hand, we'll have a graduate who unfortunately is close to being functionally illiterate. Equal and opposite evidence of the same system's performance. Over the last decade or so, we've watched the legislature shoot what I call silver bullets into the system, laws changing everything from when we can retain a 3rd grader to how we evaluate our teachers. And those were intended to address some of this disparate student performance. But piecemeal legislation is never going to solve these systems challenges. Neither will money. As Governor Whitmer said 2 weeks ago in her State of the State address, and I quote, "The reality is that we invest more per pupil than most states and achieve bottom 10 results," unquote. We shouldn't be surprised about this, however. Most of you are familiar with the School Finance Research Collaborative report, also known as the SFRC report, which in 2018 produced funding recommendations, which at the time far exceeded what the state was sending schools. The headline was, "Our schools need more money." But if you read the 350-page report, you'll see that the researchers emphasize repeatedly that more money invested in the same old practices and the same old system will produce the exact same results. It goes on to highlight several schools around the nation that have drastically outperformed their demographic peer because they fundamentally changed the system's design, starting with an unwavering commitment to what every child will learn, engaging in evidence-based practices to ensure that learning, developing and supporting our teachers to be successful, building accountability and responsibility for that success across the board, and then adequately and equitably funding that system. That's why the work of the launch framework or the recommendations produced by the PK-12 work group as part of the Governor's Growing Michigan Together Council are so important. Just like the SFRC report did 7 years ago, those recommendations begin with defining a non-negotiable academic standard for every Michigan student, and then reverse engineering, if you will, the system that can produce those results with consistency and at scale. It is, in fact, exactly what top performing states in this nation have done. As elected leaders, I urge you to review these recommendations and work alongside those with the constitutional authority to call for this complete system review. Silver bullet laws will not change our performance. Money won't either, but you can.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We will now pivot to those online. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, caller, are you there?
Hello? Yes, I'm here.
Hi. If you could mute
I can
YouTube
hear
in the
you.
back.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Got ya. Thank you so much. Whenever you're ready, if you can state your name and where you're calling from, you may begin your 3 minutes of public comment.
Oh, okay, okay. Wait, can I, hold on. So what do I do? Where do I start at?
So just go ahead and so tell us your name and where you're calling from, and then I will have a clock for you for 3 minutes, and you can provide your 3 minutes of comment.
Okay, all right. Let me try to get this all in 3 minutes. Okay, so, all right. Okay. My name is Tiffany Gator, and I'm calling from Saginaw, Michigan.
Very good.
Okay, so when do I go?
Go for it. Yep, it's your time. Yep.
Okay. My name is Tiffany Gator, and I have the distinct honor of representing the interest of 2,000 families in 83 counties across Michigan. Our focus is on adults with severe developmental and intellectual disabilities who have aged out of the system of free and appropriate education at the age of 26. Many of these individuals are so severe, disabilities are so severe that they do not qualify for college education programs or vocational programs. First, let me praise the Michigan Department of Education system. I'm a product of it. I'm now pursuing my doctorate of education at U of M, and I'm a proud mother of 3 students that are in the system. However, my son, 23, is who I'm here to talk about. His disability is so severe that he goes to Millett Learning Center in Saginaw, Michigan. The one thing that I've witnessed in the state of Michigan is that we're advocates for strong secondary education. Governor Whitmore did MyLeap, which allows people to go to college 2 years free. She also put money into other secondary education programs. Even in the Workforce Innovation Act, Title II, it allows prisoners to continue their secondary education in prison. So we basically in Michigan tell people, you know what, we believe in you. And just because you may have made a wrong choice or something, that doesn't mean that we give up on you when it comes to education. But this opportunity is not afforded to to adults with severe developmental disabilities after they turn 26. They leave the education system and must try to make their own makeshift education system. The system is not even deemed important enough by the state to be regulated or structured. Many adults run into these unlicensed, uncertified centers, and the workers are not certified to teach our children with special disabilities after age 26. This situation puts these adults in risk for abuse and loss of education skills. Now, if you're lucky, you live near an education center. If you're fortunate, you might have the insurance to pay for it. If you're rich, you can pay for it for yourself. And if you're lucky, the researchers, they can educate your child, but most likely if you're in a low poverty level, this isn't going to happen. So basically what we're asking is that we pull from the MyLeap Fund to help us fund those over age 26 with severe developmental disabilities who want to continue their education in Michigan. We looked at the Disability Act, and it says that Title II says that there must be you can't discriminate against people with handicaps who want to pursue a secondary education. And if there isn't a program for them, you must create one for them. And right now, there is nothing for these parents to go to. Furthermore, it does impact the family.
Thank you for your public comment today.
Sorry. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, are there any other callers who have pre-registered for public comment today?
There is nobody else in the lobby.
Thank you. This concludes public comment.
Thank you, Board. We're going to pivot now to approval of the meeting minutes from last board meeting, February 11th, 2025. Mr. McMillan moves, and Dr. Pritchett ties with Senator Bullock for second place. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote.
Bullock? McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder? And Tilly? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. Approval of the minutes of the Legislative Committee meeting of March 6th, 2025. May I please have a motion associated therewith? Dr. Pritchett moves. Do I have a second? Second from Dr. Robinson. Is there any discussion?
There is audio.
Yes.
There is audio, yes. Any other discussion? Once, twice, thrice, and gone. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder? And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Board. We are sitting at 1:25 p.m. The next item on today's agenda is a presentation on expanding CTE, the challenges and creative solutions associated therewith. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent in the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education, and Administrative Law, Selena Mills, Director of the Office of Career and Technical Education, Charmaine Fletcher, the Associate Superintendent of 21st Century Learning / CTE Director in Shiawassee Regional Education Service Agency, Paul Brieger, the Dean of Students and Instructional Coach in Shiawassee Regional Education Service District. I apologize for misstating earlier. William Brown, the Superintendent in Allegan Area Educational Service Agency. Joe Tenbush, the Career Education Planning District Administrator in Allegan Regional Education Service Area. Dasali, a student at Fenville High School, 12th grader in Auto Tech and in year 2 of Auto Tech. So she must have liked year 1. And Evan, a student at Outlook Academy, 12th grader in Auto Tech year 2, and I guess the same would be true for Evan as well. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required, but board members, you may have to work on a car afterwards, so pay close attention. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. I appreciate it. And I'd also like to mention that Evan's parents are in the room, and we really appreciate them for supporting Evan and for supporting CTE. So thank you. So good afternoon. Our presentation will include both the staff and the students from Allegan Area Educational Service District, as well as staff from the Shiawassee Regional Education Service District. I'm going to start the presentation, then hand it off to our partners, and our Director Selena Mills from our Office of Career and Technical Education will close our presentation. Okay, so we have shared the metrics and benefits related to CTE with you in a previous board presentation or presentations. You know that our CTE enrollments are at an all-time high, although we want to see them continue to grow. You know that CTE enhances graduation rates, post-secondary enrollment, and credential attainment, as well as employment outcomes for both concentrators and completers of CTE. Additionally, we shared that CTE we have to have access for all students. Currently, we have inequitable access across our state. Funding for CTE, including millage funds, vary greatly. CTE programs are expensive, and without additional funding, expansion removes current funding from existing programs. In other words, the funds are finite, and we'd have to stretch them over numerous programs. So we've made some progress, and we have more work to do. Our ISD presenters today will share their unique approaches to expanding CTE for the students in their community. Allegan, we'd love to hear your story and the story of your students.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So thank you. It's quite an honor. Thank you, Dr. Rice and members of the State Board of Education. If you know any adolescents that live in Allegan County and they have a dream, or even they don't have a dream, I strongly recommend that they come to the Tech Center. We have it all, we do it all. So if there's a young person that wants, during their senior year, to make money, they should join our welding program and do work-based learning. If there's a young person that wants to enter the U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship program, retire at 50 and along the way, have a dream house and go on any vacation you want, join our building trades. Do you want to get a job this week and during our interview week and have a job that on average pays $87,500? Join manufacturing. Do you want to go to the University of Michigan or Northern and make it through first year engineering all the way to graduation and come to our engineering program? You want to get your associate's degree 1 year out of high school and have it all paid for? Or then transfer to a 4-year college and graduate in 3 years? Join our early middle college program. Come to the Tech Center, we do it all. There's a fascinating study that was done in 2012 from the University of Chicago that had to do with failure rate. And the conclusions are self-evident. Students who fail 9th grade year, who don't have the academic mindset, success skills, winning habits, usually don't do better in high school. And then things, a lot of times don't turn out. And so a big challenge of education is, how do you make sure that 9th graders don't fail, or students in general don't fail? If you look at this data here, this is our grade distribution at the Tech Center. This grade distribution of the percentage of students that have A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's or F's is more closely related to the Ivy League. If you look at our percentages of A's and B's and not having F's or E's. For the Ivy League, people would say that, well, is there grade inflation? And I'd argue there's not. There's a lot of hardworking people. And at the Tech Center, it's the same thing. The University of Chicago had further studies that came out after the failure study, and one of them was called Teaching Adolescents to Become Learners. And in that, they had 5 academic mindsets or adaptive mindsets that are a difference for young people in their education and learning. First one is purpose, having a sense of what a person wants to do down the road in their life, and it doesn't matter if that changes, doesn't matter, but just having a sense of where they want to go helps, because it makes today important, and it makes today relevant. And when young people that are in auto tech do mathematics, it's not mathematics anymore. It's just doing auto tech. Growth is growth mindset. You know, the whole idea that mind works like a muscle. Like fixed mindset, if a student thinks that they can't do anything, and they think that that's how they are, that's how it turns out. But as soon as they learn that they can grow and learn, it's amazing what happens. Belonging in a sense of team and family, which is, I think you'd see, all of our classes are almost like their own little institutions, their own little colleges, really. And you'll see the belonging that kids have. And then the last one that's not up there is self-efficacy. And that's something else that at the Tech Centers, we do really well. And I think that that's where CT is very special in education, and honored to be a part of it. So Superintendent Brown.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Board, Dr. Rice, and Department. It's my honor to serve as the Superintendent of Allegan Area ESA. And the picture you have before you, Dr. Rice got to experience firsthand. This is our brand new automotive tech building that allowed us to double the capacity to serve our students. Being a smaller service area, we were able to serve 50 students in the auto tech program, but we also have a waiting list. That is not okay. So we do have a millage, 1.725 mils, that does not expire. And we have put money aside annually into a fund, obviously within our budget for our capital improvements, to the point we were able to build this building $8 million and did not have to borrow any money to do so. So by making the fiscally wise decisions, we're able to serve our students and double the capacity for our auto tech building, as well as move our heavy equipment program back to the main campus. Part of having this adaptive mindset is having our partners. As you know, business and industry does not operate in isolation. Therefore, CTE programming cannot operate in isolation or operate in a vacuum. I am not going to read all of these on here, but you can see basically the age span starts all the way with our Head Start classroom that is a cooperative classroom in our tech center, and the meals and snacks for this program are put together by our culinary arts program, teaching that life skill. We go all the way up to Lake Michigan College, where we have our early college program. We do not have an early community college within the boundaries of Allegan County. Lake Michigan College serves us as a tremendous partner. Hey, we do have some students today who would like to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their experience with you.
Hi, my name is Dasil Herrera. I'm a senior at the Fenville High School. I'm a second-year auto student too. I have a 4.0 GPA. Wink, wink. And I love automotive because it helped me learn about how cars are worked on how electrical works, how engine works, and how we could serve other people for our school, for our community, for everyone who use cars for a reliable way to go to work, go to school, or anywhere. The challenges I went through is about learning cars. When I first joined automotive, I didn't know much about cars. I was just, oh, something new, huh? But ever since I joined that, I made my mindset to be in automotive industry, to work on cars, to work on cars to make more money, and help out other people. I used to work when I was 16, working at my. You can ask Tim Bush. He likes me. And now I work at the Whatnot in Fenville, and I've been such a good worker for them. I've been promoted at least 2 times from 6 months I've been there. And then for Fenville, I'm a backstage tech guru. I'm one of the 2 members. I am in band, pep band, and marching band. And then we're going to state for band. Wink, wink. And then what else? For my plans after graduation, I'm planning to go work straight to workforce, either to my communities, my school bus garage to work on their buses, and I'll be a bus driver for them since we are low on bus drivers, or go on to a apprenticeship for West Side Services. Any questions?
We'll wait for the questions until we get everybody. Wink, wink. Thank you. Who's next? Evan?
My name is Evan Hiscock. I am a senior at Outlook Academy in Allegan. I'm also a second-year student at the automotive program. I originally started last year in Allegan, but I did make a pretty bad mistake. No harm intended, but I did make a mistake. So now I'm at Outlook, and I'm very grateful for the Tech Center for allowing me back in. It's really helped. It's helped me keep a sense of belonging when I was stripped of one of them. It's also helped me create some sort of plan for the future. I walked into high school thinking, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I had no idea. And then I saw the automotive program. I just wanted to work on cars, really. I've always wanted to do something with my hands, and automotive seemed to be that next step. And the program at Allegan was really a big help in that.
Thank you. Who's next? We'll get to Q&A, but I want to hear from everybody first.
We're gonna shift to Shiawassee.
Perfect. So welcome and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present with you this afternoon. My name is Paul Brigger. I'm the Dean of Students. To give you some background knowledge on Shiawassee County, we are sandwiched right between Clinton County and Genesee County, about 40 minutes northeast of here. We are a rural county with approximately 68,000 residents, 88% which are native to Shiawassee County. In terms of education, roughly 20% of our population have a post-secondary degree. Our two largest industries in Shiawassee County are manufacturing and agriculture. We service 8 public school districts, which include Byron, Corunna, Durand, Langsburg, Morris, New Lothrop, Owasso, and Perry. Roughly 9,800 students in the county, and in terms of social economics, over half of those students qualify for free and reduced lunch. With agriculture and manufacturing being our two largest industries, we do have a strong CTE presence in Shiawassee County, over 28 CTE programs. 22 of those are run by 7 out of our 8 local districts. And then from a county perspective, our Shiawassee RESD, we offer 6 programs. We offer electrical, health science, which is our largest program, heavy equipment, which is brand new to us this year, public safety, teaching cadet, and welding. And for our countywide programs, those are open to all of the county juniors and senior students who meet our requirements to attend. Charmaine will talk in a minute about a CTE millage that was passed in August of 2022. But prior to that millage being passed, our programs were kind of spread throughout Shiawassee County, basically wherever we could find free rent in those local districts, which typically meant that our programs moved from district to district or classroom to classroom each year, and having that lack of a centralized location presented scheduling issues because potentially some of our students could drive from one side of the county to the other side just to attend one of our countywide programs. Additionally, we did not have any RESD staff on site, so we relied locally on heavy district administration to help us out. Also, with a lack of transportation assistance, that presented a barrier to students. So unless a student had their own vehicle or had a parent that helped with transportation, they were not able to attend any of our programs. We also relied locally on district tuition to help offset those costs, which meant that we were not able to offer any new programs or offer any existing programs unless class sizes were full. So I'll turn over to Charmaine, who will talk about the benefits of once that millage was passed.
Thank you, Paul. I'm Charmaine Fletcher. I'm Associate Superintendent and CTE Director for Shiawassee RESD. As Paul mentioned, we passed our first millage in Shiawassee County on August 2nd of 2022. We had 3 goals with the passage of that millage. The first was to cut district tuition to take that financial burden off of them. The second was to centralize programming in our county to make it more accessible to all students. And the third was to provide transportation assistance to students. The day the millage passed, we cut tuition in half for local districts to attend our program. Later that school year in April, we found a soon-to-be vacant elementary school that was located in the center of the county, then called Nellie Reed Elementary, and we purchased it in April of 22-23. We took possession of it in June. In 60 days, we transformed it from a kindergarten school into our college and career readiness center, and it opened up to students for the 23-24 school year. As I mentioned, it's in the center of the county, so it's certainly lowered the burden of transportation time for students all across the county that attend our programs. And with this school year, we coordinated and helped defer some of the cost of busing students from all 8 local districts to our career center. So within the first 12 months that the millage passed, we accomplished our 3 goals. To give you a little idea of the impact on that, it really lowered barriers to participation in our CTE programs. with the announcement of a consistent centralized program locations versus rent, wherever we could get free rent. Our enrollment increased 54% from 85 students in 22-23 to 131 students in 23-24. Then when we announced for the 23-24 school year that we were going to have transportation assistance the following year, our enrollment again increased 71% from 131 students in 23-24 to 224 students this year. For the first time ever in 23-24, we actually had waiting lists for our CTE programs. We had 12 students on the waiting list, and Paul, being the excellent dean of students that he is, worked with the students and our counselors, and he was able to accommodate their second choices for those students, so no students actually remained on the waiting list. However, this year, we had 25 students on the waiting list. We were able to accommodate 15. Unfortunately, 10 remained on the wait list. Which brings us to where we are now. The CT millage has been a phenomenal springboard for us to accomplish our goals, but we're nearing the capacity of our $2.5 million millage, but we are not nearing the capacity of what our community wants. So our current challenges are the building that we're in, our College Career Readiness Center. We're anticipating next year every room will be taken. Which means that we won't have space for new CTE programs or to offer overflow sessions for programs in which we have wait lists. Our welding program is the only program of the 6 that Paul mentioned that's actually not on our campus. It remains with Baker College. We also do not have a community college in Shiawassee County, but Baker has partnered with us for welding because our current building does not have the structure for welding booths. Unfortunately, having those students on a separate campus, it limits transportation opportunities for them. It also limits our staff assistants. So we don't feel like those students are as much a part of our culture of career tech ed at our College and Career Readiness Center. We also don't own our own buses at the Shiawassee RESD. We rely on the local districts to provide busing to our center, and we help reimburse them for their costs. But once the students are there, we're kind of landlocked as far as offering work-based learning and field trip opportunities for our students. And lastly, we have a public safety program that is designed to train first responders in law enforcement, fire rescue, and EMTs. Our advisory committee overwhelmingly would like to have an emergency medical responder credential, which is state approved, offered with that program. But at this point in time, it's very cost prohibitive for us to offer that credential. So we thank you very much for this opportunity to share our story, and we look forward to the next chapter with your support.
So you heard fast, quick presentation from 2 counties who have a millage, who have a center, who have programming, but still are facing some challenges to be able to really serve their community and serve their students in the way that they would like. So our goal, again, is to increase the number of state-approved programs that we have and to really be able to bridge that gap for all students, to make sure that they all have the opportunity for credentials, they all have the opportunity for an early middle college and for academic and college credits, and then to really increase that awareness around CTE. I mean, it sounds like we have some already because we have waiting lists, but we want every student to know what an opportunity it is. So we are absolutely thrilled with your support and want to thank you so much for bringing this to light and helping us to kind of rise this message up around why CTE is so important and why we need to expand it. Again, we're doing great things and we've seen growth, but we have a lot more room to grow. So we really appreciate your support in that. And then we also appreciate the governor's support. Seeing that that priority in her education budget recommendation has been really wonderful as well and shows that there are some possibilities for us and for what we can do to grow CTE. So thank you.
Thank you very much, presenters. Now we'll pivot to Q&A. So board members, questions, answers, reflections? Please, Ms. Guzmano.
Well, first of all, you two are amazing, and I would love for you to help me with cars because I know nothing about them. And my dad, though, was a gearhead growing up and always, tried to pass along the knowledge. But I just want to commend both of you because it sounds like you're going to be wonderful humans. I had a question, though, and it's directed towards Shiawassee about that affording a partner to teach the emergency medical responder, because I hear that a lot. I teach in Rochester, and I know that there's differences, among schools in the county for the different CTE programs. So what is it that is cost prohibitive? Like, what costs so much money, and can the state help, or can you talk more about that?
So currently, we tried to partner with one of our local ambulance companies, and for them to loan us their personnel to teach the course, it'd be about $3,000 per student per year to do that, and that's on top of us having an instructor. So that's just too heavy. On average, when we contract, it's $3,000 a year, the whole year of the education, our total cost for a program. So that would be $3,000 above our normal cost for the public safety program.
And I don't know if maybe you could answer this, sorry, follow-up, like nationwide, is that specific to Michigan in the programs we have with that amount of money, or how do other states do it? I don't know. Like, that seems like a lot.
That's something I don't have the answer to right now, but
Okay.
I can find that out for you. Every state looks at things a little bit differently.
And different programs have different costs as well. Right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kuzmano. Other questions, comments, reflections? Dr. Pritchett.
Thank you, both of you, for taking that step. I know sometimes when you have to leave your school to go to a CTE center or another school district that offers a program or whatever, among your friends, peers at your school, is that a hurdle for them? Is it like, well, I don't want to leave my school and have to go, down the road here or get on a bus or?
So I don't know for other schools, but I do know for Allegan, it's not, for the Allegan Tech Center, it's not a huge issue of transportation because most schools do bus students to and from. But I know that at Allegan, a lot of students last year in the AM program would get really angry about how if Allegan would have a half day, they would just miss half their tech time. And then also the PM students, if they didn't have their own transportation, they didn't go to tech at all because Allegan wouldn't bus them to and from, so they would have to have their own. But transportation wasn't a huge deal, I'll say.
Schools in Fenville, students in Fenville are really excited to go to tech center. Even 10th graders are eager to go to a tech center. They're like, let me go to your class. I want to see you. I'm like, no, you don't. Anyways, transportation is wonderful at our school. We have 4 bus drivers that are gladly to take us to and from our classes, and they're really nice, and they even offer us treats. We have a good day.
And we do pay for all the buses for all
Yes.
the local schools to the tech center.
Our bus drivers loves just take us back and forth. They get to learn about us, and we get to learn about them, and we build great relationships with them.
That's great. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Other questions? Ms. Tilley, question, comment?
I was going to say, are you sure you don't want to be a comedian? Well.
I'll stick with Otto.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Other reflections? Senator?
I'm good.
You're good?
She got me laughing.
Ms. Snyder?
I hope you guys made your day better.
Say it again, please. What'd you say?
I hope I made your day better.
Without a doubt. The more we interact with young people, the better the day is, without a doubt. We appreciate the work that you're doing in our 2 RESAs. You're doing terrific work. We appreciate that. We're working to try to give you more resources to make more dreams possible for our children. 112,000 children last year who were in CTE, 52,000 CTE completers. I believe both are all-time highs in the state. But only 25% of the kids in the state experience CTE any given year. And though that's up, it's not where it could be. And there are challenges. There's no doubt that there are challenges, but there are also ways that we can push on those challenges and work to address them. You had no millage, now you do. How cool is that? You had half a tech center when you saw it as a full tech center, and now you have double the space, and who knows, it may grow from there as well. So there are a lot of opportunities that our young people need early, and if they get them early, it makes them more capable later. It makes them more plugged in now and more capable later. CTE really does change trajectories. We talked about this when I was in Allegan, that you can take a kid who's a little bit wayward, not a bad kid per se, but just kind of drifting, and he or she finds a reason for being in school, and all of a sudden you lock in. And there's a real value to that. Not suggesting any particular dream is better than any other, but if it has meaning for the child is a lot more engaged. So we appreciate your work, and young people, keep rocking it out. Congratulations early on graduation.
Thank you.
And best wishes in your future. Thank you.
So much.
Board, we are going to pivot to the report of the State Board President.
Just going over some of the activities this month has been, this last month between our last meeting and today, has been quite a few events, and most of those events have been surrounded around or standing on efforts to or talking about efforts to defund public education, and potential threats of dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. There are a lot of questions that are out there. There are a lot of people who want to know what they can do to avert that. And so some of the activities, places that I've been is Flint Community Schools Board meeting, Flint International Women's Day, advocating for women, working together to advance policy that uplift our children, our education system. AFT across the country held activities on March 4th around standing for our children. AFT Michigan, DFT here in Michigan featured an event with educators, students, and allies to protect public education. Alongside Dr. Mitchell Robinson, I joined parents, educators, and union leaders and community advocates in Jackson. We delivered a letter to Congressman Tim Walberg, who is chair of the House Education and Workforce Committee, asking him to oppose efforts to defund our children's education, asking him to reject policies that threaten educational equity and public school funding, and also asking him to stand up for the freedoms and protections for students and educators. As has been mentioned, March is Music Education Month. It's also Reading Month, and it's also Women's History Month. And it's a time that we celebrate literacy, education, equity, and the contributions of women in history, and had the opportunity to talk to Representative Brenda Carter, who was a sponsor of House Bill 4064, and talking about the importance of cursive writing. I don't know if you all are stopped in the way that I am often about children knowing how to write and knowing cursive writing. So it was good to have that conversation with her. And of course, we will be putting forward the cursive writing resolution a little later today. Let's see. Addressing Michigan's reading levels and concerns around reading and literacy and writing, was able to participate in a community conversation on reading and highlighted Michigan's longstanding education funding issues and how they contributed to declining literacy rates. Was able to discuss what we often talk about here is the Michigan's per pupil funding falling nearly behind every other state between the years of 1995 and 2015, looking at the various impacts that funding as well as policy have had on student outcomes. One of the pieces that I was able also to highlight was classroom size. And some of these statistics I really look forward to run by the department and you, Dr. Rice. Michigan, looking at Michigan and the statewide, that Michigan does not have a statewide cap on classroom size, and which has led to overcrowded classrooms, of course, all the other contributing factors. And what I've seen or what I've read is that a University of Michigan education policy initiative found that 1 in 20 first graders are in homerooms with 40 plus students, and that gets worse for upper grades, that Black ninth graders are 3 times more likely than white peers to be in overcrowded classrooms, that low-income students are 60 to 70% more likely to experience large class sizes. Of course, looking at urban districts that face these conditions as well, knowing that this also coincides with not having teachers, and of course you have to pay teachers to have teachers in the classroom, as well as make sure that teachers are respected, and we're retaining teachers. And so it was good to hear during our legislative conversation, Senate Education Chair Dana Polehanke say that she is pushing for policies that reduce class sizes while also ensuring high quality teachers remain in the classroom. And I say this because, we often look at outcomes, not always looking at the outputs. So looking at classroom sizes, of course, the further upstream causes of not having smaller classroom sizes is making sure we have teachers and that we have the funding to pay the teachers. Also, being able to make the connection between education and mass incarceration, looking at spending here in Michigan, that we spend 5 times more per prisoner than we do for a K through 12 student, and highlighting those statistics there. And these were all conversations that were had with the Michigan Reading Association during a public conversation that was had. Have been able to talk to parents. One of the parents who spoke during a public comment, Miss Gator, who has 3 children, all having children with varying special needs. She has a child who's at Center for the Arts and Sciences, or SASA, and she has a child that's at Millette Center. I don't know if you heard that. And then she has another child who's in another program within Saginaw Schools, and just really looking at the varying services that are needed and the varying services that are provided for different children. But having this opportunity to listen to children, as well as reading the report, as I stated last month, Ellen Lipton and I have been talking about the Autism Alliance and the report that was provided there. And again, we'll have conversation later today about that. So lots going on in education. I will just close by saying that, we have to continue the fight for increased public education. We don't get the services that we need. We don't have the supports for our children who we call resilient unless we're able to fund those supports. We don't have smaller class sizes unless we're able to fund the ability to ensure that there are other classrooms to put children in, as well as teachers to put in front of them, and the books and everything that go with that. We have to continue early literacy investments, and of course, we've been talking a lot about that And the more I talk to community about those investments that we're placing through dyslexia, through letters, community members, educators are excited about that and anxious to see the impact. And we're already seeing the impact of those investments. So I know we all will continue to fight for these resources, and when we talk about resources and funding, we're definitely talking about policy hand in hand. That goes without question. But that is all that I have.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. So board, it was good to celebrate this morning the highest four-year graduation rate in our state's history. Dr. Chapman, Dr. Harmel, this accomplishment was a long time in the making and benefited from local school districts' use of the EWIMS early warning system, state guidance, personal curricula, the state's graduation rate guidance, and expansion of rigorous high school programs like CTE to increase student engagement. You heard Evan's story. Asani was locked in. He wasn't. And finding a program that engaged him, connected him to school, and gets him over the finish line, and gets him pursuing a dream after high school. That said, no one metric defines public education, Dr. Pugh. Like the human body, education is simply too complicated to be distilled into a single metric. That's why we have multiple goals of the top 10 strategic education plan, Dr. Golzinski, and multiple metrics for goals. The four-year graduation rate, a goal 5 metric, isn't the only one in the strategic education plan that is at a historic high, Ms. Tilley. Our post-secondary credential attainment rate, the percentage of adults ages 25 to 64 with a credential beyond a high school diploma, has reached 51.8%, a historic high for the state as we work toward the governor's 60 by 30 goal. This is goal 6 of the top 10 strategic education plan. Career and technical education completers, as I mentioned earlier, were in excess of 52,000 last year, tops in our state's history. Early middle college participants were just shy of 16,000, the highest in our state's history. The number of students taking one or more advanced placement tests topped 63,000. The number of AP tests Ms. Kuzmano taken was almost 111,000. The number of students scoring a 3, 4, or 5, scores that often qualify for college credit, exceeded 44,000. The number of AP tests with a score of 3, 4, or 5 topped 77,000. These are goal 4 metrics, all historic highs in the state of Michigan. Trustee, our Great Start Readiness Program enrollment exceeded 40,000 students this year, the highest in the state's history. This is goal 1 of the top 10 strategic education plan, the governor's universal access to preschool goal. Funding for children's mental health and school safety, Senator, is more than $250 million this year. Lower than last year, it's true, but far greater than the $31 million in fiscal year 19, the first year of children's mental health funding in the state's history. As such, districts have been able, Dr. Pugh, to increase the number of helping professionals, school social workers, guidance counselors, nurses, and school psychologists by 1,700 in the last 5 years. I'm not saying that we have arrived, but I'm saying you heard what our Teachers of the Year said about the importance of having support not just in the classroom, but for and around the classroom. Along with breakfasts and lunches universally available for public school students, this is historic progress, board, on goal 3 of the top 10 strategic education plan. Dr. Pritchett, as a longtime educator, you know we've made significant strides to address the teacher shortage. Goal 7 of the top 10 strategic education plan. In the last 3 years, the legislature and governor have approved budgets with more than $1 billion in total for scholarships and student teacher stipends for students working to become teachers, grow your own programs for support staff and middle and high school students that are exploring careers in education, teacher loan repayment, mentoring, induction, and a rural credentialing hub. All ideas from MDE to mitigate the teacher shortage. Yes, there are still shortages, without a doubt, but we've made inroads. Increases in teacher preparation, program enrollments have increased every year since 2016, 2017, and the numbers of teacher certificates awarded has increased every year for the last 5 years. We've also made strides to address adequate and equitable school funding, Goal 8 of the Top 10 Strategic Education Plan. Foundation allowance has increased and the retirement contribution rate that districts must pay has decreased. The major categorical grants, Section 31A, 51E, and 41, have all increased by significant percentages in the last 3 years. A $125 million general education transportation reimbursement was added to the budget in fiscal year 24 for the first time ever, a matter of rural funding equity. Funding increases have helped us begin to address the teacher shortage. We have a long way to go to fully address our underfunding. As I mentioned earlier today, Michigan was dead last in the nation in total revenue growth, inflation adjusted from 1995 to 2015, and third to last in the nation in per pupil revenue growth, inflation adjusted during the same period. We continue to dig out of this dubious distinction and require a referendum to rectify our school funding consistent with the School Finance Research Collaborative study, whose recommendations continue to be underfunded by billions of dollars annually in the state. Many metrics, board members, have increased over the past few years post-pandemic, but are not yet at historic highs. For example, CTE participants exceeded 112,000 students, a 9% increase in the last 3 years, the highest level in at least the last decade, and likely the highest in our history. Similarly, participants in dual enrollment, college and high school at the same time, passed 35,000 students, again the highest in at least the last decade. Participation in advanced placement and international baccalaureate are both higher than pre-pandemic, with AP up more than 12% in the last 2 years after decline before and during the pandemic. Similarly, on state summative assessments, in spring 2023, Michigan students scored higher on 15 of 20 assessments. In spring 2024, Michigan students scored higher on 13 of 20 tests. Broadly, we've increased in most grades in math, science, and social studies, with reading up in some grades and down in others. Board, with respect to the improvement of early literacy, we have quite a ways to go before we arrive at the requisite outcomes on Goal 2 of the Top 10 Strategic Education Plan. That said, 3,600 educators have completed Letters Science of Reading training, with another 6,500 working on their training. MDE has advocated for Letters funding, and we appreciate the support of the legislature in the last 4 years in granting us that funding. MDE is advocating that the legislature mandate Letters training for all K-5 classroom teachers. Last fall, the legislature passed literacy/dyslexia laws for which MDE had advocated. These laws will require districts by 27-28 to select from approved screeners of dyslexia and benchmark assessments and approved high-quality early literacy instructional materials. They will also require intervention for students whose screeners reveal characteristics of dyslexia. Moreover, the laws will strengthen pre-service and in-service training and literacy coaching. In effect, what these new laws will do is to create a system from 835 LEAs and 56 ISDs because what we have on early literacy right now is local control run amok. We need a tighter system, a true system for early literacy, where we get stronger outcomes because we're more coherent and cohesive in what we do for our young people. Beyond making letters training mandatory for all K-5 classroom teachers, the legislature could help additionally in 3 more ways. Greater funds for high-quality early literacy instructional materials in Section 35M, that's that $87 million category, which would help districts jumpstart the work to implement elements of the law. Let's get moving on this so that they get these materials in classrooms in 26, 27, rather than waiting until 27, 28. Number 2, funding for low class sizes in high poverty K-3 classrooms, like our president mentioned. And number 3, fewer exceptions to the statutory 180 days of in-person instruction, and by extension, more time for our students to learn. The legislature chipped away at student instructional time and in-person student instructional time in the last 6 years. It needs to rectify these errors in the State School Aid Act this year. As I mentioned, Board, education's a lot more complicated than a single metric. If a human body can't be defined by a single metric, surely something far more complicated, a system of education, can't either. Thank you. Board, we are at that point in the agenda that we all look forward to with veritable bated breath, and that's our state and federal legislative update. And we'll hear from Mr. Bob Wheaton, our Director of the Office of Governmental Affairs, the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, and Ms. Olivia Ponte, Legislative Liaison in the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, who will provide the state and federal legislative update. And then we'll pivot to our 4 resolutions. I would also like to introduce our new legislative analyst, Dylan Gephardt. Dylan, could you stand and do kind of a Prince wave? There you go. Very good. Thank you so much. Welcome. Mr. Wheaton, Ms. Ponte, to you.
Good afternoon, board members. We have a lot going on in the legislature right now, busy time, so Olivia is going to update us on some of the things that are going on.
Thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, board. Yes, there is a lot going on in the legislature right now. Last week was especially busy, so I'll go through that and what we're seeing this week and what we can expect in the future. So last week we had a Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on MDE, at which Dr. Carnell and I provided testimony on the executive budget recommendation for MDE. There was also a Senate Oversight Committee at which Dr. Kelleher, the Director of the Office of Nutrition Services, testified on the federal funding freeze for the local food purchasing agreement. Then we had the House Education and Workforce Committee. They took testimony and reported out a series of bills related to certification fees, certification endorsements, local teaching certificates, among other things. 2 of those bills, I should note, were reported straight to the House floor, and another 2 bills were referred to the new House Committee on Rules, which they were then reported to the floor from that committee. So all 4 of those bills eventually made their way to the House floor. And I would expect a vote on those bills in the full House soon. This week, we had the House Appropriations Subcommittee on School Aid. They met this morning, and they heard presentations from a number of charter school groups led by MAPSA, the Michigan Association of Public School Academies. The House Education and Workforce Committee will also meet tomorrow, and on their agenda, we're expecting bills on the Consolidation and Infrastructure Fund, electoral districts for board members, districts posting a link to the My School Data website on the district webpage, as well as adding trade schools into the Post-Secondary Enrollment Act. I should also note that last week, the House passed a budget that was 75% of the current funding in the current year's school aid budget. So this was a $15 billion school aid budget, and it included 4 items. So the first item was the foundation allowance, which would be increased to $10,025 per pupil. Then it would increase the school safety and mental health funding line item to $350 million. It would increase the special education foundation allowance to an amount equal to the foundation allowance increase, so 4.3%, making that total $127 million increase there. And it would also contribute to MIPSers, the retirement system. So with those 4 items, you'd be at that $15 billion. The House did express that this is not the House budget. This is not their intended budget that they would like to put forward in the process. This is what they call a government shutdown prevention plan. The appropriations chair on the House side did say, we're not working towards a shutdown, we're just doing this as a precaution. So we're watching as the true House budget develops, as the Senate budget develops, and we'll keep you apprised of anything that we hear along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Are there any questions about that specific item? A smidge of confusion about it last week. It's not intended to be the budget. It's it's considered a stopgap if need be down the line. Okay. Other reflections? Other questions? Can't give it away. Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. We're going to move to our resolutions board. Dr. Robinson, I believe you have a resolution to move?
Do you want me to? Yes.
Okay,
I
so we
move
have
this. Yep.
okay, we have a movement of a resolution. Do we have a second? Okay, we've got Senator Bullock.
Yeah, she did.
Dr. Robinson
You got it?
to
You want me to read it?
It's as you choose.
Well, I think we've already discussed it. I know we have a lot of other things.
I would ask you for people who are tuning in 5 hours later, minimally to paraphrase.
I am happy to read it in honor of March's Reading Month, as
As you
well as
choose.
Music in Our Schools Month. Whereas we believe public education is a pillar of our democracy and at the center of community life, we believe in the power of music to help students find their voices as human beings, to express their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and to become fully human. We believe every child, regardless of race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, LGBTQ status, gender identity, socioeconomic status, or learning ability, deserves access to high-quality, sequential music instruction. Whereas the Goals 2000 Educate America Act, passed in 1994, designated music a national core subject for the first time, this designation continued with the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, which identified the need to, quote, strengthen arts education as an integral part of the elementary school and secondary school curriculum. The universality of music and its inclusion as a core subject in federal statutes should naturally lead to a music education requirement for all public school students. Since 2011, all graduates of Michigan high schools have been required to take 1 credit in the Visual, Performing, and Applied Arts, VPAA, which includes music. However, there has never been a music requirement for Michigan's elementary school students. Whereas as recently as 2018, only 6 states, Alaska, Colorado, Hawaii, Michigan, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and the District of Columbia have no statutory requirement for elementary music. Whereas we believe that music instruction, as with all other subjects and disciplines offered in the school curriculum, must be delivered by a qualified, certificated teacher who holds a current and valid state teaching certificate in the subject which they are teaching. Whereas we believe there should be a dedicated position within the Michigan Department of Education responsible for supervising and providing guidance for music instruction in our state. Therefore, be it resolved, the Michigan State Board of Education calls for and supports legislation that includes the following. A, for each of grades pre-K to 5, the public school shall provide for all pupils at least 30 minutes of music instruction, at least 2 days per week, for a total of 60 minutes per week. B, these classes must be taught by a certified Michigan Department of Education Certificate Music JQ music teacher. C, the Michigan Department of Education shall create and appoint a dedicated position responsible for supervising and providing guidance for music and arts instruction in the state's public schools. D, the governing board of a public school shall ensure that an elementary general music teacher to student ratio of no more than 1 teacher for 400 students is maintained. E, curricula should be formed at the local level, consistent with state and national standards. F, each building should have a classroom or teaching space dedicated for music teaching and learning. And G, an appropriate budget should be established and maintained, consistent with the recommendations of the National Association for Music Education.
We have a motion, we have a second. It's been read into the record. Any questions or discussion by board members? Mr. McMillan.
Well, I certainly have said that I really appreciate and would urge and support locals to add back music into their curriculum. Some of these are too prescriptive and could be, I think, problematic regarding just various of these items. I think it's just something that I'll just pass.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Other, Ms. Snyder.
I would just say I'm in support of the resolution. Yes, some of these things are prescriptive. I still think that, absent legislation that reflects the exact prescription that it's suggesting, that it's still local control. But I would highlight, we're potentially about to vote yes on, having music teachers certified, but this same board and the Michigan Department of Education is discouraging certification of special education teachers in consistency. I have a problem with that, and I'm looking forward to talking about that with the next resolution. So my vote will be yes. I will remain consistent with what it looks like to honor teacher certification.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. Anything else for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice, hearing and seeing none. If we could have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Evans.
Yes. Bullock?
Yes.
McMillan?
Pass.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, board. Dr. Pugh, you have a resolution, I believe, on cursive writing.
I do. Whereas I move, getting right at it. Okay, I move the resolution in support of cursive writing education in Michigan schools.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Senator Bullock. And back to you, Dr. Pugh, to either read it into the record or to describe it in pertinent
Read it
parts.
into the record.
Okay.
Whereas March is nationally recognized as Reading Month, an opportunity to highlight the importance of literacy and its foundational role in student success. And whereas research has shown that learning cursive writing enhances cognitive development, improves fine motor skills, and strengthens the brain's ability to recognize patterns in language, which supports both reading comprehension and written communication. And whereas studies indicate that cursive writing aids in literacy development by reinforcing the connection between reading and writing, particularly in early childhood education, and whereas cursive proficiency allows students to read historical documents, personal letters, and other handwritten materials that form an essential part of cultural and civic literacy. And whereas Michigan House Bill 4064, passed by the House of Representatives in April 2023, sought to encourage the Michigan Department of Education to develop or adopt educational curriculums that include cursive writing instruction, making it available as an optional component for schools. And whereas despite board support, House Bill 4064 was not enacted into law. And whereas numerous states have already recognized the importance of cursive writing instruction and have implemented policies ensuring students are equipped with the ability to read and write in cursive, and whereas ensuring students have access to cursive writing education will enhance their literacy skills, support their academic achievement, and preserve an essential mode of written communication for future generations. Therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education strongly supports efforts to integrate cursive writing into Michigan's educational curriculum, and the passage of legislation that promotes the teaching of cursive writing in schools. And be it therefore resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education encourages the governor and members of the Michigan legislature to emphasize the necessity of cursive writing instruction as a component of comprehensive literacy education.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. We have a motion, we have a second. We've had it read into the record. Board members, any other reflections, any discussion? Dr. Pugh, any additional discussion beyond that? Very good. Board members, any reflections? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Board, thank you so much. Dr. Pugh, to you, you have a resolution. It's my understanding that you'd like to move on defending public education.
That is correct. I move resolution of the Michigan State Board of Education defending public education, civil rights, and democracy against the executive orders and directives that threaten our children and communities.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second from Dr. Robinson. Dr. Pugh, back to you.
Okay. Whereas public education is a fundamental pillar of democracy, ensuring that every child, regardless of race, income, or background, has access to a free, high-quality education, and whereas the President of the United States has issued approximately 83 executive orders and directives, many of which pose direct threats to children, public education, and fundamental civil rights, including efforts to dismantle and defund the U.S. Department of Education, jeopardizing more than $1 billion in funding for Title I and other titles, and special education funding for Michigan schools, placing the future of low-income special education and at-risk students in jeopardy, undermine birthright citizenship, challenging the 14th Amendment, and creating uncertainty for millions of children born in the United States, eliminate advancement of diversity, equity, and inclusion, undermining civil rights protections and educational equity, promote federal overreach into curriculum and school policies, fostering an environment of censorship that threatens truthful, inclusive, and historically accurate education, promote diverting public education funding toward privatization and school vouchers, pulling much-needed resources away from public schools without ensuring accountability for student outcomes, threaten educators and school administrators with penalties for teaching topics related to systemic racism, gender equity, and historical injustices, thereby limiting students' ability to engage in critical thinking and civic discourse. Whereas the U.S. Department of Education has threatened loss of federal funding if schools fail to comply with the directive to dismantle efforts which promote diversity, equity, and inclusion despite existing federal civil rights protections that require equitable access to education, whereas these actions present a direct assault on democracy, equity, and state sovereignty over public education, undermining the fundamental values of diversity, equity, and inclusion that strengthen our schools, drive innovation, and prepare all children to succeed in an increasingly global society. And whereas these actions represent a direct assault, disproportionately harming Black, Brown, Indigenous, LGBTQ+, immigrant, special education, and other historically marginalized communities, whereas the Michigan State Board of Education, in partnership with the Michigan Department of Education and Michigan Attorney General's Office, is committed to defending the constitutional and civil rights of all students, families, and educators in Michigan. Now therefore be it resolved that the Michigan State Board of Education strongly condemns these executive orders and directives as attacks on educational access, civil rights, existing federal and state laws, and democracy, affirms its unwavering commitment to public education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, rejecting any federal efforts that undermine these principles, supports continued legal action by the Michigan Attorney General and state leaders, including State Superintendent of Public Instruction, to challenge these executive orders in court and prevent their enforcement in Michigan, urges the Michigan legislature to enact protections for state-level diversity, equity, and inclusion, special education funding, and local control of curriculum, ensuring that Michigan's educational system remains guided by evidence-based policies, not political ideology, calls on Congress and the U.S. Department of Education to reverse these harmful policies and uphold federal laws that safeguard equitable access to education for all students, encourages school districts across Michigan to refer to guidance from the Michigan Department of Education, which outlines current Michigan statutes, protects equity and inclusion in education, consult with legal counsel to ensure compliance with state and federal civil rights protections before making any policy changes in response to federal directives, maintain diversity, equity, and inclusion within the framework of existing legal frameworks, and continue to provide safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environments. Stands in solidarity with student educators and families directly impacted by these directives, reaffirming that Michigan will not be silenced in the fight for educational justice. Be it further resolved that the copies of this resolution be distributed to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan Legislature, the U.S. Department of Education, Michigan's congressional delegation, local school boards, education advocacy groups, and the public to make clear that Michigan remains steadfast in its commitment to equitable education for all students and will continue to uphold policies that ensure access, opportunity, and inclusion in our schools.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. So we've had Dr. Pugh move the resolution. Dr. Robinson has seconded it. She's read it into, Dr. Pugh has read it into the record. Dr. Pugh, is there anything more that you would like to say before we move into discussion?
No.
Okay, very good. Board members, discussion on the resolution on the table. Ms. Snyder.
So this is very clearly a Democrat narrative and response to a recent EO that our president has placed. And I think that I need to bring backstory to what's happening here because in honor of Women's History Month, I think we should do our due diligence in telling the accurate, truthful reality of history and comprehensive history, as we've all agreed needs to happen at this board. So Title IX, formerly known as Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, is a landmark federal law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in any educational activity or program receiving federal funding, essentially guaranteeing equal access for women in education, including athletics, scholarships, and other aspects of school life. It was signed into law by our president on June 23rd, 1972, and is largely credited on the efforts of Representative Patsy Mink, who is considered the primary author of the legislation. The motivation behind Title IX's history is that the law was enacted during a time of growing women's rights activism, aiming to address the widespread disparities in educational opportunities available to women, particularly in athletics where they were often excluded or given significantly fewer resources compared to men. Title IX has had a profound impact on women's sports, leading to a significant increase in female participation at all levels of competition. So this resolution is seeking to defend public education, civil rights, and democracy against an executive order named Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, which supports the historical accuracy of Title IX, which was aimed at protecting their rights. We're speaking out of both sides of our mouth here. So Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, that's the title. And here is what is written in that EO. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and to protect opportunities for women and girls to compete in safe and fair sports, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, Policy and Purpose. In recent years, many educational institutions and athletic associations have allowed men to compete in women's sports. This is demeaning, unfair, and dangerous to women and girls, and denies women and girls the equal opportunity to participate and excel in competitive sports. Moreover, under Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972, which I just read, educational institutions receiving federal funds cannot deny women an equal opportunity to participate in sports. This isn't a threat, folks. This is being in compliance with federal law that was written in 1972 in the name of civil rights for women. As some federal courts have recognized, ignoring fundamental biological truths between the two sexes deprives women and girls of meaningful access to educational facilities. I'm going to be very plain language here. They're speaking of the biological identification of a woman who has breasts and a vagina. not people who think they have it or want to have it, but people who actually have it. Therefore, it is the policy of the United States to rescind all funds from educational programs that deprive women and girls of fair athletic opportunities, which results in the endangerment, humiliation, and silencing of women and girls, and deprives them of privacy. It shall also be the policy of the United States to oppose male competitive participation in women's sports more broadly as a matter of safety, fairness, dignity, and truth. We want to teach comprehensive history, but not when it serves our narrative. We want equality, but not when it doesn't serve our narrative. We want fairness, inclusivity, and historically accurate education, but not when it doesn't serve our narrative. So, no, we shouldn't be putting forth a resolution to defend public education, civil rights, and democracy against executive orders that quite literally serve that purpose. I will definitely be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Tilley and then Mr. McMillan.
So I definitely am supporting this, absolutely. And I'm very glad that you have drafted this and brought this forth. Thank you, Dr. Pugh. You know, we have gone through getting documents that state that funding would cease. And then days later, funding it's rescinded, so funding can resume. Funding has been cut for organizations that receive grants, that service and do educational research for districts as well as the Michigan Department of Education. There's threats to funding with what we initially received that would affect IDEA, wraparound programs, school meals. There are so many different components. And schools, legislators, congresspeople, department heads should not have to scramble and scuffle and worry about what is going to happen to the funding and how is that going to affect our students, our children. And we are talking, we've had a lot of conversations around special needs population. That is an important population that would be affected. We've had conversations about low-income, impoverished communities. With those meals and those wraparound services being scaled back, they would be affected. Even our middle-class families, those students are getting lunches right now. We don't know what's going on in those individual homes. And with what's going on in the economy and with inflation, those students could very well need those meals just like our impoverished students. So there is so much on the line. We need leadership that is going to stay focused and not from one day to the next tell us they're going to do this with funding and play these games, all types of games with funding. So I am definitely in support of this. I think everyone, and this really is a nonpartisan issue when you're talking about the level of funding and programs that will be affected in our schools. So thank you again, Dr. P, for bringing this forward. I think many of us at this table and at the department and in the districts have great concern over the funding issues and threats.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tilley. Mr. McMillan.
Well, I'll defer to
Thank you.
Ms. Snyder.
So, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, let's do this then. Since we don't want schools to be under the threat of losing funding because they're not following federal law that was written in 1972, and now an EO that is supported at the federal level in a multitude of ways and is within the Constitution's presidential right to do this, let's add under F, 7F, I, encourages school districts across Michigan to adopt President Trump's EO, keeping men out of women's sports. So I move to amend the resolution to add following the law and following the EO to the resolution so that we don't have schools that are
Did you
facing.
send this to the board via email?
Tom did.
No, I sent it similar. I didn't realize it. You can do it your way. That's fine.
It's fine. If we're, I mean, as a rule, I mean, you've got it verbally, reshared verbally, please.
Okay,
So that
I will.
everybody has it. But as a rule, there's a value, particularly for visual learners, to be able to see it. But go ahead, do it verbally,
So
please.
underneath F,
7F.
7F, there's I. We'll add a fourth I. And we can say, adopt President Trump's EO, keeping men out of women's sports. Because that would honor the very spirit of this resolution, which is to protect civil rights, defend public education against executive orders like our past presidents who encouraged this division in the first place by diverting from 1972's federal law that we are expected to provide equal opportunity to young girls and women.
We have a motion to amend. We have support from Mr. McMillan. Back to you.
So this is the option here, right? We could adopt an amendment to this resolution, keep with the spirit of honoring public education, civil rights, and the laws that we've had on the books since 1972. And we could move forward, and schools wouldn't need to lose funding. We could honor the constitutional presidential EO that is out.
And so this would be Roman numeral 4, under 7.
Correct.
And it would say
7F4.
7F4. And one more time, please, for the listening public.
Adopt President Trump's EO, keeping men out of women's sports.
Very good.
Keeping men,
Out of women's
not boys,
sports.
men.
No, boys.
Keeping men
That's what it's called, yes.
out of girls' sports.
Mhm.
Keeping men out of girls' sports.
Men and
Okay.
girls don't go to school together.
Women's sports.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend on the table. It is a motion to amend Dr. Pugh's resolution. I'm going to ask if she would like to address it first, and then Ms. Tilley to you thereafter, if you don't mind.
If we add F4 to page 2, it's gonna make item G go to page 3, and I don't like the way that looks, so I'm gonna say no.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Ms. Tilley, to you.
Equity and inclusion encompasses way more than just that. I feel like this has become a political statement. Oh my gosh. I know there has been a lot going on around DEI as well, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want to state for the record that the population, the group that the benefactors of DEI are actually white women. They benefit more from DEI than any other group. So I'm going to vote for it as is. Again, there's a lot with equity and inclusion, even equitable funding. There's a lot up under equity. So, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, one more question. I forgot. I know what I wanted to ask too. How many students in Michigan do we know actually boys that have transitioned?
Right. So we are, hold on a second. We're just, I just want to, because we can go really deep into the rabbit hole here. I want to make clear where we are. We have a motion to amend. We are considering Ms. Snyder's motion to amend, and you've asked for a point of clarification. Okay. And your question, I want to clarify your point of clarification, so I answer it correctly, or try anyway. How many young people?
Who have transitioned
Mhm.
play sports,
Okay,
specifically boys that have transitioned and now identify as girls.
so, so the answer that I received from Mark Yule, who is head of the Michigan High School Athletic Association, last week, when I called him about this issue, was that there were 2 in the fall, none in the winter, none in coming up for spring sports. He indicated that the 2 in the fall were associated with cross-country.
Isn't accurate.
And he said that in those 2 cases, in all cases, but there were only the 2 this year, they consider 2 factors, MHSAA. And to be clear, Michigan High School Athletic Association, as you know, is separate and distinct from state government. Okay. But he said that there are 2 factors that they consider when there is a petition made by a transgender child play women's sport. The first is safety. The second is competitive advantage. And in the case of these 2 young people, the board is what is responsible for MHSAA. The board of MHSAA determined that there were no safety issues in cross-country and that there were no competitive disadvantages associated with these 2 in them running cross-country. I hope I did justice to your question.
You did. And I know that that wasn't what this resolution was about anyway, but I just wanted the
No,
clarification.
we're pretty deep into, right, exactly right. And that's why I came back out and said, there's a point of clarification associated with a motion to amend associated with a base resolution. Because I want people who are listening to try to be able to follow the conversation. Yes, okay, cool, thank you very much. Mr. McMillan, back to you.
Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of the amendment. This resolution talks about condemning executive orders. This is one executive order that I think that reasonable people and like 80% of all voters would support. You know, biological boys playing in girls' sports. I don't care if there's 1 or 2 or none right now, but we're talking about in the future. Tomorrow or whenever volleyball season starts, at least we would be on record saying that we want school districts to say that in their teams, there will be no biological boys playing in girls' sports. It's very simple. I know there's a lot of interest in obfuscation, but this is very simple. You either support boys playing against girls in girls' sports, or you don't. It's very simple. As much as you want to try to, like I said, obfuscate and make it, what about this or that? No, it's simple. So 80%, 90% of voters believe this, of citizens in Michigan. I understand why the Democrats would want to say it's because it turns to a different page or something that doesn't have to do with the issue, because this is an issue they want to run away from. This whole resolution is political. So to say that this one amendment is political, it's amending a very political resolution. So again, it's very simple. You want boys to be playing in girls' sports or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. We go to Senator Bullock.
Shit. Excuse me. The amendment is not germane to the resolution. The resolution is about defending public education. Title IX is specifically about sexual discrimination. We are talking about the defending of public education and the executive orders that are dismantling education as a whole, including the DEI, which covers the discrimination portion. In the essence, is as Member Tilly said, DEI and the greater conversation is about the greater broad range of education, the equitable manner in which we're trying to get to the civil rights and the directives that are threatened by these executive orders. So if they want to put out a resolution that specifically talks about sexual discrimination in Title IX and its purpose, that's fine. But it is not germane to this resolution or
Certainly
the
is.
intent. I get the political play. You guys can play that all day. I'm good with that. I'm good at it. It's almost insulting to add it because the resolution is about everyone, not just specifically women, not just specifically the disabled. This resolution is about the executive orders that infringe upon the rights of everyone who is under the guise of learning in institutions here in the country. And Title IX doesn't address all that. And so I'm gonna be voting no because it's not pertinent. It's not prudent for this resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bullock. Ms. Snyder, back to you.
Yeah, you don't, here's the issue, and it's not, this disagreement isn't gonna stop, and it's a disagreement that I consistently share with others that,
We all know.
excuse me, I did not interrupt you. Please have some respect. DEI is not up for just your definition. It's up for our society to collectively decide. In 1972, they decided that women, in fact, are considered diversity. They do have equality. They should be included in these things. And we don't decide later on when it doesn't politically suit us to say that they are not, in fact, DEI. And when we suggest that there are executive orders, in plural, that are threatening to withhold federal funding that is consistent with the 1972 law, that is directly related to civil rights of all people like you're describing. Again, we don't get to pick and choose what civil rights we think are important to fight for or not. It doesn't work that way. So no, I think it's incredibly germane to say, you know what, we are going to include current federal law, historically accurate interpretation of that federal law that still governs the civil rights that young girls and women have. That's important. And I'm going to go back to the number. The number is not accurate. There's no doubt in my mind the number's not accurate. I'm fully aware that HIPAA makes it so that we don't necessarily have access to the confidentiality that people have with whether or not they choose to divulge that they are a transgender athlete. And MHSAA may not know that. They may not have policy that requires all of their athletes to register on that level. And even if it did require it, have we seen that lawsuit come forth and the courts interpret that they are required to divulge that information? We are very early on in the issue of what it looks like to protect the civil rights of girls and women in this respect, and to make sure that that is something that's carried out long term. So the reality here is we can say to people in cross country, it's not accurate. I know it's not accurate. I know firsthand in my own school district that that's not accurate. So we are not going to base it off of arbitrary numbers that, make us feel better about it. To Tom's point, whether it's 1, 2, 0 now, today, or tomorrow, it's okay to say young women and girls have civil rights that we decided mattered in 1972. We're not going to reinterpret it because it politically suits us today, and it still matters. That is what this amendment does, and it is germane to this resolution. And yeah, how offensive, really, because G has to be moved to page 3, I don't like how that looks on this paper. Give me a break.
Question.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder.
So are you in support of DEI? Because it sounds like you are.
We're coming through, excuse me, Ms. Tilly, we're gonna come through the chair. We're not gonna do, yeah.
I did wave at you and I said I asked that question.
No, you asked for the floor. I gave you the floor. But that didn't mean that it was going to become a floor fight. We're not going to go back and forth
No,
like
it
that.
wasn't a fight, it was
Yeah.
just a question.
Okay. Bring the question through the chair.
I was asking her, was she in support of DEI? Because it sounds like she is in support of DEI.
Okay, all right, very good. Would you care to
I'm in
respond to?
support of a resolution that will include the exact verbiage that I just spoke.
Anybody else before we vote on Ms. Snyder's motion to amend?
No.
Seeing none, you're going to please read the motion to amend.
So it will be under number 7, now therefore be it resolved. It will be under F4. It will be adopt President Trump's EO, I will spell out executive order, keeping men out of women's sports.
Very good. So, roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
No.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
No.
Pugh?
No.
Robinson?
No.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
No.
Motion fails.
So we're back to the base resolution. Are there any other motions to be considered?
Call for the question.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote on Dr. Pugh's resolution without amendment.
Bullock?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Pass.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. Dr. Pugh, back to you.
I move State Board of Education resolution to provide a pathway for all students, including those with disabilities.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? For the second from, look like a jump ball. Okay.
The
Oh,
senator would
look
win
at
in a
that.
jump ball. So.
Look at that. Senator Bullock, you were given the second by your colleague. Dr. Pugh, to you to read it into the record or to explain it in pertinent part.
I'll read it. I think it's easier. Whereas the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA of 1975, guarantees the right to a free, appropriate education for students with disabilities, whereas the Michigan Department of Education, Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education, and intermediate school districts ensure procedural safeguard protections and compliance with IDEA, whereas the State Board of Education is the constitutionally prescribed body to oversee education statewide, whereas the State Board of Education recognized the ultimate need for IDEA is ever present, and that the federal government oversight that ensures states comply with the mandate should remain. Whereas the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Public Law 101-476, passed by Congress and signed into law by President George H.W. Bush in October 1990, likewise pledged that the federal government would fund 40% of the cost of these services, and the State Board of Education unanimously passed a resolution to support the funding of special education on October 8th, 2024, with calls on Congress to fund 40% of the excess costs of services for students with disabilities. Therefore, be it resolved, the Michigan State Board of Education supports increased funding and resources to ensure that all schools in Michigan can provide adequate and equitable support to students with disabilities, recruitment, training, and retention of robust special education workforce to address the current shortages and improve educational outcomes for students with disabilities, policy which promotes increased inclusion and belonging of students with disabilities in their least restrictive environment, ensuring that these students spend more time with their non-disabled peers with appropriate supports as mandated by IDEA, implementation of early identification programs for students with suspected disabilities to ensure timely access to special education services, thereby maximizing educational opportunities from an early age, and school engagement with parents, creating stronger partnerships to support the educational needs and rights of students with disabilities, as well as the procedural safeguards set by IDEA.
So we have a motion, we have a second. It's been read into the record by Dr. Pugh. Dr. Pugh, would you care to share additionally on the resolution?
What I will say is that I appreciate Heather, who has come to the board table, talked about the Autism Alliance repeatedly. We're continuing to hear from parents and other organizations, and many of us are talking to folks in the field. And so we know that this is a start around the conversation. I think that this is broad enough language that it allows many of the issues and concerns that we continue to hear to fit into the various buckets that we've presented.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Board members, any reflections? Mr. McMillan.
Well, I just submitted or sent everybody an amendment that I would like to move. My amendment would be to add at the end, and it's in an email. Number 7, therefore be it further resolved that the State Board of Education directs the state superintendent to place the Office of Special Education complaint process to be directly accountable and answerable to the State Board of Education through a structure to be determined by the State Board of Education.
Second.
So, board, just so that you're able to follow along in your hymnals, that was in an email for those of you who are online. It was in an email that Mr. McMillan sent you 1 minute ago. Correct? Please. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I speak to it?
Yeah, we have a motion. We have a second. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the resolution talks about what we support, but, you know, actions speak louder than words, and we actually can do something as a state board. It would be, you know, somewhat unusual, but it would be something that we have the authority to do. If a state superintendent could give us the authority, I don't know what it would look like exactly, but I understand, and I just was texting back and forth to a advocate, one of the leading advocates in the state for special ed. And, you know, I held a hearing back in 2014 as a state representative, chairman of the oversight committee on this process, the complaint process the parents have. Right now, their complaint process goes to the ISD, which is, you know, put the people that are serving the ISD on that board is put there by the local board. So there's really a conflict of interest there. And then it goes from there. We have, you know, an Office of Special Education where there's a complaint process, but the process virtually ignored parents. And, you know, it was not very transparent at all back in 2014. And I'm told it hasn't changed since then in 11 years. So I think if you really want to get to the heart of helping make sure that we have good special education here in the state, we don't need to blame things on the federal government. We could do it here in the state. We could do it here right at this table. I don't know if it's a committee that looks at every complaint or looks at all number of complaints and decides which one they want to look at and maybe recommend to the state board to review. Maybe we have an additional meeting. We have 2 meetings a month, whatever it takes. I think this is we could do this. We could put in place a process. And if the state superintendent, if this particular state superintendent didn't want to allow this to happen, we could find one that will. But, you know, I just think that this is something that would really, an action by the state board that would actually get to the heart of the matter and make sure that problems are dealt with in the system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McMillan. Dr.
Robinson.
Yeah, it is Dr. Robinson, but I was pausing mid name.
It's okay, Dr. Rice.
You know what? I'm going to ask if Dr. Pugh would like to respond, given the fact that it is her resolution, and then come to you.
Board Member McMillan, we do want to hear and listen to parents in the field about what is going on. And as mentioned, this is a start. Well, it's not even really a start. We've been asking during our agenda discussions to have more conversation around special education. I've been listening to parents. I remember as the groups, the ISDs or the communities were at the end of the table. I remember with CTE, I went around to different CTE programs when I wanted to learn more about CTE. Around charter issues, we talked a lot about that before we started advocating around charter transparency. When it came to advocating for additional funds, we had different groups and different researchers to bring that research to the table. So I am definitely all for hearing more and learning more from the experts who are the parents, the educators, the field. And I do agree with that, if that's what you mean, but I would have to understand what this looks like better, what is presented in your amendment. And so I will vote no for that, but I know in talking to Ellen and what I've brought up in previous meetings, I'm definitely willing to work with our agenda planning, from an agenda planning perspective, to make sure that we're hearing from as broad and diverse a population of people who are experts around special education as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Dr. Robinson, to you now. Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to get some clarification here. This amendment would remove control from local schools and move it to a state organization. Oh.
We currently have.
No, through the chair, can I explain?
Please.
Yeah, so, no, there's a process of appealing the decision at the locals, goes to the ISD, as I understand it. And then a parent can say, I want to file, or a parent or an advocate can file a complaint with the State Office of Special Ed.
This process in place.
There is a process, but it stops at the Office of Special Education, and things die there. There's no transparency. You know, and it doesn't come to us. I think that this is one area where it would make sense for us to say, Office of Special Ed, you can certainly do your procedures, but we're going to oversee this and make sure that parents and advocates in the systemic issues, that those complaints are dealt with appropriately.
So the state board doesn't oversee that now?
No, not directly, no. We have one employee, and whether or not he does it well, in this particular area, I delved into it back in 2014, and again, I just think that this is an area that parents and advocates and others, it's not a good system. There's no accountability, and this would bring more accountability, and it would put us in, make sure that issues are dealt with in public, quite frankly, if needed, or dealt with in a committee, whatever the structure. I don't know what the structure would be necessarily, but that we as a body would oversee this portion of what MDE does directly.
So you want us to, the amendment would ask us to vote on a process that is not defined, and I'm still unclear about how it's different than the process that we have.
Okay. Sorry. Would you care to respond?
Yeah. I mean, right now, if it's not handled well, a complaint. If a complaint isn't handled well and they're unhappy about it, it dies. There's no okay, what's next? Where if it's not handled well, we are now overseeing it, and we would be saying, what are the complaints? What were the results, and was this handled correctly or not? We would be able to interject, and yeah, I mean, I can't tell you what exactly that system would be, and it makes it clear in my amendment that would be worked out, and I trust that we can work that out. I mean, I don't have a majority, so you can be assured that you would probably be happy with the system. It would be worked out. I'm not sure I would be, but at least there'd be some accountability.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. McMillan. Dr. Robinson, Ms. Tilley, I believe it is to you.
Thank you. I do have concerns systemically, which I shared with you last night and Dr. Pugh. And I would like to see some improvements. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know that the answer is state board members giving oversight. I don't know the influx of complaints or how we would give oversight to those complaints, but I would like to better understand the process. And if we can get at our next meeting, get a presentation on what the current process is that MDE does, as well as, how does MDE handle complaints from the districts, but what's the data? What's the data? How many have been resolved? How many are still unresolved? I think that would be a good start. And then also, what is SEAC's role in any of that? Can SEAC be a part of that? Possibly, I don't know, but I would like to see some improvements in the system.
Let us reflect upon that and get back to the board. But that's a sharing about the motion to amend, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Ms. Snyder.
We've already reflected on that multiple times. There's a number of things we've talked about at this board over and over and over and over again. We're effectively proving to the public and the legislature that we are not effective at our jobs right now. Because our state superintendent has pretty much disagreed with the federal government when they're investigating our special education system in a one of its kind since 27 years ago Office of Civil Rights complaint on the way that we provide compensatory special education services. Okay, there's a box to check. We had SEAC come to the table and pretty much say that the federal government the law does not have any specificities in terms of how they handle these complaints and who they communicate them to, or how they escalate, or how they are investigated, or how they are dealt with and resolved. They said it at the board table. So SEAC, we could go back and ask the same question again and like hope they give us some other fancy answer that makes us feel better about ourselves. But no, it's time to act, right? There's a reality here where these complaints really do go places where they should be able to go to be resolved, but they go to places to die, which is why the federal government says, okay, Michigan, you're not doing this right, and we're not going to sit here and let you just say, well, never mind, we don't think we agree with you. That's not how this is going to work. So we could take the constitutional duty that we have to oversee public education and actually take the step and do it. We don't have to wait for SEAC to say anything different. They've already told us what they are doing and not doing. They didn't feel like it was necessary to tell us about that OCR complaint for us to discuss it at this board table. Same thing comes from the state superintendent. So we either take up the duty of leadership or we don't. And this is like one small step in the direction of what it would look like to do that. Because we could come together and say, it wasn't working at SEAC. There's no federal law that requires it. It's not working with the state superintendent. The legislature hasn't acted on that, and we are the constitutionally prescribed body that oversees it, just like it says in this resolution. So we could take the first step and say, we're gonna lead. We're gonna give parents and students a space for special education complaints so that things don't fall through the cracks like they have been, and so that they actually come to resolve. And so that all of the work that was done in this book, which there's plenty more to talk about in relationship to what Autism Alliance of Michigan is saying here, but there has to be a space for it. Right now, there's multiple spaces for it with people who aren't doing anything about it.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Any other questions? Please.
I wanted to give a point of clarification. The Office of Special Education and SEAC are two separate entities. Mm-hmm. So what I'm asking for is the Office of Special Education, who directly gets the complaints to do the presentation, and not just a presentation. I mean, more, you know, when I ask for data, I mean more of an internal audit. What has come through the office? How many complaints have come through the office? How many complaints have been resolved? How many complaints still need to be resolved? So that we could get a good grasp on what's happening, what's going on, and to better explain the process, because we don't know, we're not in the day-to-day weeds of everything. So we don't know what's going on with the process, where gaps are. And I'm big on change management. And so I'm happy to say that I can see that we need changes, but because I'm not there day to day, I don't know where the gaps are. So if we can get more information from that office, and then also SEAC, I don't know if they give any oversight. I know that SEAC was implemented by the governor or legislature. I thought it was
Federally mandated.
federally mandated, okay. But then didn't in Michigan, we have to pass a law or something? I thought it was a law on the books also to create SEAC from some research that I was doing. At any rate, are there any opportunities for SEAC to expand and with its duties to help with oversight? And also, I want to say we are not experts in this area. None of us at this table are expert in this area. So I don't know how much oversight I could give, but I could help with the process. Help improve the process, as well as I'm sure other board members can too.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tilley. Anything else for the good of the group on Mr. McMillan's motion to amend? Mr. McMillan, if I could just have, just ask one question. So if the board were to approve your motion to amend as part of a resolution that then were approved, would you recommend hearing these complaints of parents in public session?
I said the system would be worked out. I mean, you know, obviously, if there's confidential information, we would have to, we'd have to figure out the system so that it's done, that the oversight's done appropriately.
I'm just trying to understand, because you are a public body, you're required to meet publicly, and yet there are students' FERPA protections. So I'm a little bit at a loss as to how you would handle your oversight responsibilities as a board in this area.
Well, currently, somehow, your Office of Special Education handles FERPA issues pretty well with FOIAs and things like that, so we'll figure it out.
We're public educators, and we're not subject to the same constraints that you are. But I understand your point. I appreciate it.
If you have to view it in camera or whatever, we could figure out a system.
Okay. Ms. Evans, if we could have a roll call vote, please, on Mr. McMillan's motion to amend.
Would you like me to read it out loud one more time?
Please.
Okay, it would be to add a paragraph 7 at the end of the current resolution, stating, therefore be it further resolved that the State Board of Education, State Board of Education directs the state superintendent to place the Office of Special Education complaint process to be directly accountable and answerable to the State Board of Education through a structure to be determined by the State Board of Education.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. Ms. Evans.
Bullock?
No.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
No.
Pugh? No. Robinson?
No.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay. Any other motions? Please, Ms. Snyder.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on a few things and then move to amend the resolution again. Okay, so when you break down number 6, therefore be it resolved, it very much reflects Michigan Autism Alliance Group's recommendations in their letter in the packet that was given to us. So I want to break that down a little bit. So one of the first things it says is increase funding and resources to ensure that all schools in Michigan can provide adequate and equitable support to students with disabilities. But the only body of this resolution attacks the federal government for its funding structure of IDEA. And yet in the Autism Alliance of Michigan's book, it talks about structural issues in Michigan's school finance system. If you turn to page 71, it says, while there are certainly many factors that contribute to the current challenges in Michigan's education system, the most significant driver is the state's current school funding approach. Michigan is one of only a handful of states that primarily funds the state portion of special education through a percentage-based reimbursement system. And among those states, Michigan is an outlier still yet, providing a mere 28.6%. This is often the lowest reimbursement rate in the country. I tend to be somebody that doesn't point fingers at other people until I have my house in order too. And so I'm just going to throw it out there that unless a resolution that comes before this board acknowledges its own failings, it's not very helpful to point fingers externally. So when we think about what it looks like to provide adequate and equitable support to students with disabilities, we've got to look at our own budget and say, why are we providing such a mere portion of the state's expected portion to come to the table? I tend to be somebody who comes and says, look, you expected me to do 60 and you were gonna do 40 and I did my 60, where's your 40? But it's really hard to do that if we're not even doing our 60. So that, and it's not in the resolution, it's not addressing it as an issue that has to be addressed, and I have a problem with that. Under B, it says recruitment, training, and retention of a robust special education workforce to address the current shortages and improve educational outcomes for students with disabilities. And yet, 2 months ago, this board voted in favor of us not having special education teachers be certified in a rigorous way. And yet we just voted yes to have music education teachers to be certified in a rigorous way. We have to put our money where our mouth is and consider the consistency of those actions. Because we can't then also say, yes, we really care about recruitment and training when we in fact do not. And we're supporting a Michigan Department of Education and a state superintendent that is making these moves and asking us to get in line. Retention. The special education resolution that Tom and I brought before the board last month talked about making sure that special education teachers are paid and reimbursed for the work that they do in its unique nature. We wouldn't go for that. How do you retain this workforce that we're asking to be considered when you aren't willing to take any action to do it? And in most other industries, specialized work is reinforced through that kind of reimbursement and pay. Policy which promotes increased inclusion and belonging of students with disabilities in their least restrictive environment. We clearly need to revisit the legislation that was passed under Rick Snyder and Brian Kelly, because LER is something that doesn't have oversight the way it needs to have oversight. But we could be more specific about what that looks like. There's a lot of, most of this book, the bulk, topically speaking, is on that. The implementation of early identification programs for students with suspected disabilities to ensure timely access to special education services. We've talked at this table multiple times about the importance of parents being able to come to the table in their school districts and indicate that their child needs to be evaluated if they haven't been evaluated yet. If we want to talk about early identification, our partnership with parents is number one. When the dyslexia legislation was on the table before it was passed, I asked our legislative director at the time to tell me whether or not parents were allowed to have outside private evaluations if their local school district wouldn't do it. And there was no answer. It was crickets. But that is the law under IEPs. Parents can have private evaluations for their children. So engaging in expensive early identification programs that may or may not yield a result of the students that actually have that need being on an IEP and getting the services they need, we're already steamrolling the most local example of what early identification looks like. And we had the opportunity to put that in our dyslexia bills. We didn't. And of course, E, school engagement with parents, creating stronger partnerships. I mean, again, talking out of both sides of our mouth. We either really want that or we don't. Why didn't we put it in the legislation? Why do we opt for expensive programs that are early identification while we simultaneously said, parents, we really don't want to hear from you, we'll take it from here. That's a problem. So my issue with a broad special education resolution that passed up multiple very detailed examples of how we would move forward and even passed up detail within what we were asked to read by Autism Alliance of Michigan is that it doesn't go far enough. It isn't actually taking action. And it's also not calling out the accountability that needs to come to the table of what's actually going wrong. How can the State Board of Education pass a broad resolution on a topic that it does not want to actually identify the problems within that topic, truly listen to the people that are doing that, and then truly act on what it takes to resolve the problem through a potential committee in the absence of any other space actually reviewing these complaints the way they should be? So I would move to amend the resolution on a few things.
I just emailed what you sent.
Okay. So you should have an email.
It just got sent.
Okay. I'm going to read it aloud, and it is strong, and I really do think we need to make a public statement as a board that we understand what and where and who the accountability lies within. So it would be amendments under therefore be it resolved. F, direct MDE to acknowledge the wrongdoing of not providing compensatory services to students with special education needs during COVID. G would be direct MDE to pledge to never again take funds from the federal government with the explicit purpose of providing compensatory services to students with special needs and then not providing them. H, direct MDE to come into compliance with the federal special education laws associated with the dollars received from the federal government to provide compensatory education to those students most in need. Start first by identifying the problem. Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any additional discussion beyond that of Ms. Snyder?
Can you repeat your motion? It sounds like it's in the negative, but I need to hear it.
We need to direct MDE to acknowledge the wrongdoing of not providing compensatory services to students with special needs during COVID. G, direct MDE to pledge to never again take funds from the federal government with the explicit purpose of providing compensatory services to students with special needs and then not providing them. H, direct MDE to come into compliance with the federal special education laws associated with the dollars received from the federal government to provide compensatory education to those students most in need. And then honestly, look at the other areas that we said we want to, because the details are there. The information is there.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. We've had quite a bit of discussion associated with it. Ms. Tilley, to you.
So this kind of goes back to my ask, and so I wanted to add on to that. For one, it's local control. So when a complaint comes to the office, you can make recommendations, but you cannot force that the recommendations are implemented. So if there are 500 cases that have not been resolved, I would like to know what were the recommendations, what were the directions that the office gave, or not directions, what was the recommendation? And if you can go into explanation to the concern of, I don't understand how MDE gives the services, if you can explain that, and what the part about the federal funding, is there an issue with that?
Okay. I'm not 100% sure of what I heard, so I'm not going to be the one to unpack that. The mover of the motion can attempt to unpack it, but I will not be unpacking it for the mover.
Because this state superintendent is not accountable to this State Board of Education.
Tell us.
No, if you retain the right to not have to answer to the motion on the table, to this board, about compensatory services and an OCR complaint that's at the federal level, then no, you're not gonna ask questions of me when I just laid it out for you.
Okay, so I don't understand what you said, and if she's not going to explain her own motion, you can decide whether you want to vote for it or not.
A commitment to confusion is not leadership.
Mr. McMillan.
I support these amendments. It basically gets back to what we know regarding the Office of Civil Rights complaint. Like Ms. Snyder said, something that is unheard of at the federal level. It's going further than any other state has. It's going to, I believe, an administrative law judge hearing. All other states have negotiated a settlement and comply with the services that were not given by the state of Michigan and by its subsidiaries for the dollars for compensatory services for special ed students during COVID and after COVID. And it's something that, we think should be resolved. We shouldn't be fighting it. We should actually be doing what's best for the kids who were denied these compensatory services. So that's all this is saying. It's not asking, it's actually directing and saying, MDE, or actually the state superintendent, you will settle this, and we will start helping these kids, because a lot of them are aging out and they're graduating or they're moving on. The time is short, and we need to provide these services to these kids. So I'm supporting this.
Very good.
And actually, and let me just say, a resolution talking about IDEA without something like this, I think it's irrelevant. Again, it's words on a paper, but when you can actually do something, we don't do it. We just say stuff instead of actually doing things that work and that matter. So that's why I think it's irrelevant. I mean, pass resolutions that don't mean anything, but actually try to do something. We can. I gave you one option, here's another option. Tell them to settle this thing. Help these kids.
Okay. Anything more for the good of the group? Hearing none, a motion on Ms. Snyder's motion to amend.
Do you want me to read it again?
No.
Very good. Bullock.
Nay.
McMillan.
Yes.
Pritchett.
No.
Pugh.
No.
Robinson.
No.
Snyder.
Yes.
And Tilly.
No.
Motion fails.
We're back to the base resolution. Board members, does anybody else have anything else to discuss?
No, I will repeat that what's being placed here and the therefore be it resolved, yes, it is definitely heavily driven or taken into consideration parents that I've spoken to reading the Autism Alliance booklet. These are buckets that we can continue to have conversations around, and definitely during our agenda planning sessions, we can discuss items that will help us to further understand how we improve special education for our special, our students with special needs.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Anything more for the good of the group? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote on Dr. Pugh's resolution as unamended.
Bullock.
Yay.
McMillan.
Pass.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Snyder.
Pass.
And Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. Board, we are sitting at 3:36 p.m. We are at that point in the agenda. where it's board member comments. Please, Mr. McMillan.
Back when we were talking about music and I was told I had to wait, and I just wanted to continue a little dialogue and debate that we were having regarding the narrowing of curriculum and removing music. And it was stated by the state superintendent that the feds are the ones that are requiring the testing, but I merely wanted to point out, I believe, especially since I led the effort and on the state board back to make sure that we had a dashboard as opposed to A to F, so that we didn't put a lot of weight on those tests. So I don't know if I understand it correctly, the feds may require the testing, but it's the state that gives the weight or the weight to the testing, how much they're going to weigh it, whether it was, the teacher evals, whatever A to F was going to be something that not even with the federal legislation, but also the state was looking at doing A to F. Actually, I think they did for a while. So, I mean, I believe that the feds may require the testing, but thanks to what we did in the past with the dashboard as opposed to an A to F, that we made sure that the federal laws didn't hinder or hurt the schools very much. That it's the state laws that could actually do that and had in the past, that we've kind of rolled that back. So that was my only point, was that I don't necessarily want to blame the feds, because I believe the testing they require doesn't really have punitive anymore because of what we did with the dashboard. That's my only point.
Well, the testing that they require is in English language arts. It is in math. It is in science. It is state law that requires social studies. So that's one of the two exceptions to which I referred. And work keys is a second piece that is solely required by the state, not by the feds. But there are consequences associated with the federal system. It is true that ESSA is more flexible than Race to the Top, which was more flexible than No Child Left Behind. That is accurate. But that there are no consequences is not accurate. There are consequences, and local school districts become CSI, ATS, and TSI
5%,
schools.
The 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they just get help then. I mean, they don't get closed or anything. I mean,
They don't get closed. That's a good point. But the effort to close Michigan public schools was a state effort itself. It wasn't
right. It wasn't the
federal
feds.
effort.
No, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they get put in the 5% is about all, but they get tagged in the 5%. And we partnership with them and help them get out of it. But that's about the only, thing that might be viewed as kind of harmful that the feds do with testing now. Thankful, anyway.
There are people that would argue, and I would be one of them, that not in middle class and upper middle class schools, but in poor schools, there's a pernicious narrowing of the curriculum to address the testing. I'm not saying that that is the intent of the federal testing requirement. I'm saying it's the effect. I don't believe it was the intent 23 years ago, and I don't think it's the intent now. I just happen to believe that that's the effect, that inadvertently you have this narrowing which shoves out a lot of things which paradoxically are not only good for kids' well-roundedness, art, music, PE, for example, but in addition, paradoxically, they're math and language arts, right? I mean, you can weave math and language arts into a whole host of different things that in some cases we've shoved out of curricula in high poverty schools. I don't think that was ever the intent. There are people that disagree with me. I respect them. I don't think the feds ever intended to shove out a lot of the curriculum, but that most assuredly was the effect. And there are urban educators around the table who are head bobbing now because they've experienced it.
I said that exact thing.
Yeah, okay. Cool, okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Snyder.
just want to infuse also some of our past conversation and facts into that conversation, because test scores don't necessarily even impact it in the way that you guys are referring to, because with partnership agreements, and we've talked about this before, that review of goal attainment includes local and state benchmarks, and that you don't have to hit the testing benchmarks to be considered on track. So the reality is that there are several other goals within partnership agreements that are not directly related or related at all to standardized tests. And so we still have to question, you know, from one district to the next in terms of why they're choosing to narrow their curriculum. And whether or not that has an impact on it at all, because they can be on track and moving forward and not be meeting the review of goal attainments with those local and state testing benchmarks, effectively rendering it not even a benchmark.
Right. So a few things, but without getting too deep into the rabbit hole. One, when school districts are judged on this 100-point scale, 34% is associated with growth in state summative assessments. 29% is associated with achievement on state summative assessments. 63% can be viewed in no other way as being wholly about state summative assessments. That's what gets you in to a CSI, ATS, or TSI designation. What gets you out is a range of items, including some process goals without a doubt, but also product as well. And part of that product are state summative assessments. It's one thing for the 18-month benchmark review. It's another thing for the 36-month end of 3-year cycle review. And that very much is focused not simply on process, but on product as well. And I think, look, at the end of the day, I'm supportive of state summative assessments. I know some people aren't. I am, okay? I just don't think that they should be the tail wagging the education dog. That's all. Yeah. Anything more for the good of the group? Ms. Tilley.
So while I am hopeful because of the graduation rates, I'm still not happy. We have students in Michigan graduating overall at 82.8%. Students with disabilities are only at 61%. Our homeless students are only at 59.5%, and our foster youth are at 40.8%, which makes them less than half of the overall graduation rates. And our ethnic groups are, for the most part, doing a little better, but their counterparts are graduating at 85.7%. So I won't be happy until the ethnic groups are graduating at the same rate as their counterparts. So, you know, what can we do? I know there are some new things that the department has implemented since your tenure, but what else can we do that we're not doing, given the constraints in funding? I know, especially in comparison to other states. What are the projected measures or metrics for the outcomes? I know with the programs, initiatives that you currently are spearheading, I don't know that we've seen the projection of this will move the needle by such and such date, or, you know, we've said we want to see things change, but what are the projected metrics for the outcomes? African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, and all of our students deserve an education that prepares them to compete on a global level. And they can't do that with these types of graduation rates. So I definitely want to see improvements in this area. And the next question I have is, when is the last time that a fiscal audit has been done, either internally or externally? And
What? An audit of what?
fiscal audit?
An audit of what? But we have audits done periodically of funding programs. I guess my question is, what audit are you referring to?
So overall, the board that's part of our function. I don't remember getting a report on audits. So
Tell me how you think that's a part of the board's function. I'm just trying to understand what you think is being, what audits you're referring to.
So isn't part of the board, if we're over MDE, we should know that MDE is fiscally sound. We should know what's going on with the finances.
I mean, we can certainly share with you the last, the year-end close financials. I mean, the reality is that the state hasn't closed fiscal year 24 yet. It hasn't been able to close fiscal year 24 because it hasn't been able to run a supplemental through the legislature, because the legislature, for all intents and purposes, ground to a halt in November and December. At least one of the two houses did. So the state hasn't closed its books for fiscal year 24, and by extension, its constituent parts haven't either, including MDE.
Normally on boards that I've served on,
Mm-hmm.
you get a monthly report. And definitely, we should be receiving an annual report. We should see.
I mean, I'm happy to share with you what we've got for fiscal year 23. Fiscal year 24, again, isn't closed.
As well as the audit. So when is the last time that you?
Individual departments don't get globally audited the way local school districts and ISDs do. They get audited on particular programs. So the feds come in and they might audit Title I, Part A, or IDEA, Part B, or. Similarly, both the internal auditor in the state and what we call the external auditor, who isn't really external but is the auditor general, they do audits periodically. But they are discrete audits. They are not global audits, the way a local school district has an audit, the way an ISD has an audit,
So they're
the way
departmental.
a nonprofit has it. Pardon me?
They're departmental, or they are.
They're not. They're program audits.
I was just about to say, or they're programs.
They're
Okay.
program audits. Right.
So when can we get the financial update?
If you want to see fiscal year 23, it's closed.
Can I help?
Fiscal year 24, fiscal year 24 is
If I can
not,
help,
yeah.
because when I shared oversight, the Auditor General's reports came to my committee and we would hold hearings. So there are probably Auditor General, and they're very interesting and they pull no punches. Maybe some of the different Auditor General reports, there's always things that they find that's a problem, or, you know, if we had those for the last couple of years, there might be 4 or 5, I don't know how many different areas, but I mean, you might find those of interest.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
If you can give me, once you figure out how you want to proceed with giving the board that, if you can give me an update or give us an update.
I'm happy to have a conversation to better understand what you want. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Anything else for the good of the group?
Board Member Snyder brought up some points about state funding, and I just want to say that, you know, I will continue to lend my voice and do whatever you want to do together around not just adequate funding, but equitable funding, because that's what I thought that I was hearing from you, which is something that I've long advocated for, as well as others here on the board. And I didn't mention that earlier during the discussion, so I do want to mention that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pugh. Anything more for the good of the group? Once, twice, thrice. Future meetings, April 8th. May 13th and June 10th. All regular meetings, all Tuesdays, all 9:30 a.m. And Tuesday, May 20th, which is a work session, also at 9:30, also on a Tuesday. If there are any topics board members would like to recommend for future meeting agendas, please notify Ms. Evans or me. It is 3:52, board. Enjoy the gift of time.